Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi everyone, welcome to CBD Talk Podcast. This is episode number 61, and today we have another veterinarian-based, pet-based episode, which I'm very excited about because we all love our pets. And we have with us today Dr. Tim Shu with VETCBD. How are you doing, Tim?
Great, thanks for having me on, Dom.
I was honored and privileged to be able to work with Dr. Tim at the CBD Expo West, and where he spoke, and I think he did the keynote also, but was on a panel for vets, pets, and CBD. And last week we spoke with Ian Quinn and had some bad audio stuff going on there, so it doesn't sound like we have that situation today. So looking forward to having some nice clear audio so we can hear some great advice here. Okay, so I already have had the pleasure to learn a lot from Dr. Shu here, so it's your turn now. So how about we start out with you just kind of telling us how you got into working with CBD and pets?
Sure. So prior to starting VETCBD, I practiced in general medicine, emergency, and critical care medicine. And during that time, I always made it my goal to be able to provide the best therapeutic options available for pet owners. And when I started looking into cannabis and the ways that it could be used medicinally, especially the way that people were using it medicinally, I wanted to be able to apply that to animals, because if cannabis ever offered any sort of therapeutic options for animals and their owners, then I wanted us as veterinary professionals to be able to present that to them as an option, because we should be doing everything that we can to be able to improve the lives and well-being of the animals that we share our lives with.
Definitely. I mean, that's why we have them. So it's my screen's getting weird here. All right, I'm gonna do something here to try to bring this back. Sorry guys, having a small technical difficulty here. So what was the first thing that came to your attention when it came to working with pets and CBD?
Well, the biggest thing that we noticed was that it doesn't cause any sort of high. It doesn't cause any sort of intoxication. So, a lot of people are under the impression that cannabis only causes a high, only causes you to get intoxicated. But that's not the case, especially when it comes to a lot of cannabinoids like CBD. They're what we call non-psychoactive or non-intoxicating, meaning that we get a lot of therapeutic benefits from them, but we don't get any sort of high. And so, that's a major concern with a lot of veterinarians, a lot of pet owners, is the potential for causing a high with cannabis. But with CBD and a lot of other cannabinoids like CBC, CBG, we don't get that high, we don't get that intoxicating effect.
And since we're talking about cannabinoids, some people may not have a full understanding of that. I mean, they just think cannabis plant, that, THC gets you high, CBD does not get you high. They don't understand that this is a very complex plant and has a lot to offer. Can you just talk about a little bit about the plant and some of the things that it offers, like cannabinoids and terpenes and that kind of thing? Like, what, if other than CBD, what is your favorite cannabinoid?
Yeah, so there's over 100 different cannabinoids in the cannabis plant. And so when we're talking about THC, CBD, we're really just scratching the surface. There's a lot of other cannabinoids that appear to have therapeutic effects and be beneficial, like CBC, CBG, CBDV. And so, we're looking at a really unique aspect of medicine in that we have so many different cannabinoids to tap into, and we're just really getting started and we're just scratching the surface. And that's just cannabinoids. And then we're talking about terpenes, which are the essential oils of the plant. And the terpenes are responsible for the different smells that we usually get from the plant. So, whether it's something that smells citrusy, fruity, earthy, those are the terpenes that are coming from the plant. And there is some thought and some evidence that terpenes can be synergistic with the cannabinoids, and when used together, they may provide even greater therapeutic effect. In terms of different cannabinoids, definitely CBD is a favorite because of all the therapeutic benefits that it has, and the excellent safety profile. But when we're looking at other cannabinoids, I think CBDV is a very fascinating cannabinoid. It's found in very small amounts in certain strains, but it certainly looks like it has a lot of uses for epilepsy. So that's one of those things that we're just really starting to explore as a scientific community.
We had an episode with David Dawson on and he was the first one that I had actually heard some CBDV talk about. He had done a study in, I think it was in Indiana. Well, I don't know if it was a study or if he was just, I don't think it was published, but but he was working with mice in Indiana, and they were using CBDV and found out that it was beneficial with diabetes in mice and rats. And so he's working on applying for a grant right now, NIH grant right now for another study. But it's just amazing that there are so many cannabinoids and that we just really don't know enough about these other ones. We know what CBD can do, and the benefits that it has, and the safety and efficacy of it. It's wonderful, and it's just very exciting to know that there are others out there just waiting to be studied and discovered. What their potential is. So one of the things that we had mentioned at the panel was the AVMA and how they prevent veterinarians from speaking with their patients or about. See, this is where I get confused. Is the dog the patient or is the owner the patient?
Yeah, so the dog's the patient and the owner's the client.
Okay, so speaking with the client about CBD, can you just give us a brief overview of what the AVMA stance is on that, and then talk about what California is doing differently?
Right. So, according to the governing bodies of veterinarians are overall not allowed to discuss, recommend, or prescribe any sort of cannabis products. So, the discussion aspect of that puts veterinarians in a very difficult situation. Because when I talk to veterinarians, more and more of them every single day are getting asked about cannabis and how it may benefit their pets' conditions. But a lot of them are afraid to say anything about. A lot of them don't feel comfortable to say anything because of some of the things that the AVMA has said or their local state veterinary medical board has said. But here in California, we actually passed AB 2215, which is a new law that goes into effect January 1st of 2019. And what this law does is it protects veterinarians and allows them to discuss cannabis use for pets with their clients. And so this is a landmark decision because there's nothing else like it in the country and nothing else like it in the world that protects veterinarians and allows them to discuss cannabis use for pets with clients. So it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, you guys are very fortunate. I think there were a couple other states that are looking at what you guys in California have done and are thinking about doing it in their own states. Do you know of any other states that are allowing the conversation to happen?
I believe New York is looking into it, but certainly that was the goal behind AB 2215 was not just to allow for veterinarians in California to be able to discuss cannabis, but to eventually, basically blaze the trail, so to speak, to allow for other states.
I'm sorry. When you say blaze, there's some listeners that are going to be going the other way on that one, but yes, blaze the trail, yes.
Yeah, and so, that allows for other states to follow in California's path. And the ultimate goal is for veterinarians everywhere to be able to discuss cannabis with their clients, because this is something that it's not for recreational use. It's not to get any pets high. It's purely for medical purposes. And to not allow veterinarians to be able to discuss that really does a disservice to the information that they're able to provide, because this is information that clients are using to make decisions to try to do what's best for their pets.
Yeah, and if you go online, you don't know how accurate that information is. It really needs to come from the veterinarian. And just touching on the fact that you mentioned, we're not trying to get pets high. Let's talk about why it's important to not give THC to your pet.
Yeah, well, in some cases, THC.
Well, okay, let me say let's talk about why it's important for the client not to give THC to the pet. I need to clarify that. An individual, not talking about a pet, but an individual.
Yeah, well, THC does have its therapeutic benefits. So, for example, in our products, we do have small amounts of THC. What's really important is that the client doesn't try to give human THC products to their animals or try to dose that themselves, because THC definitely has therapeutic properties, but what's important is that they know exactly how much to give, and that information or that advice is based on someone with medical knowledge and background of THC as it applies to animals. And, one of the biggest reasons why is because animals, even though they all have endocannabinoid systems and respond to cannabinoids, their systems are a little bit different. They're not exactly like humans. So, for example, in dogs, they have a high concentration of CB1 receptors in their cerebellum. And the CB1 receptor is what THC interacts with to produce its effects. And the cerebellum is responsible for things like balance and your ability to move around. And so when they get too much THC, what happens is their cerebellum gets affected. And so they get what's called static ataxia, where they're having difficulty standing, where they're wobbling, where they're shaking or trembling. And that's not what we want to happen in animals. And so it's really important that, if THC is part of the picture, then it's dosed properly and it's formulated properly.
Exactly. And that's why that's why we need the AVMA to completely just change their stance so that veterinarians can openly and honestly talk to people about it and dose it and prescribe it. At this point, you can at least talk about it, but there are a lot more steps that need to be taken. So with respect to THC and CBD, how about we touch on a couple studies that you know of?
Sure.
Let's see. How about we do since we're already talking about THC, let's do that. You had mentioned something about some benefits that you had heard or something with using THC specifically.
Right. Well, for our products, we always use THC. It's just in small amounts. So it's in a 20-part CBD to a 1-part THC ratio. In THC, we do know that it has therapeutic benefits. A lot of these therapeutic benefits were elucidated through animal studies, like in rodent models. Now, there are more and more clinical trials that are coming online. Most of them are focused towards CBD, but hopefully in the future we will have ones that have multiple cannabinoids in mind, including THC. But in terms of THC, it can be used to help with pain. It can be used to help with inflammation. It can be used for nausea, appetite stimulation. It even has anti-seizure properties at the right doses. And there certainly is evidence that it can help with not just the cancer symptoms, but potentially cancer itself.
And let's just reiterate that is under the care of a veterinarian. That is, or a product that where dosing is provided by a veterinarian, so that this is not for people to just go out and do themselves.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the most important things, is that a lot of people hear about the therapeutic benefits of cannabis and they want to be able to apply that to their animal. But when they talk to their veterinarian, if they're not comfortable saying anything about it, then they're not going to get any information. And unfortunately, what that means is, because clients want to be able to do what's best for their pet, they're going to look for that information elsewhere, sometimes the internet or friends or family. And these people may not be medical professionals. They may not have the background and training that's necessary to be able to make these decisions or, give the proper advice. And so that's where some people run into trouble, is they get products that are made for humans that have way too much THC, and they use way too much THC, and they can get negative side effects from that. And, that's really not what they were looking to do or intending to do, but because they lack the proper education, because they lack the proper knowledge or the guidance, then they do things on their own and inadvertently cause side effects from getting improper dosing information.
Yeah. That's why it's really important for things to change and for us to keep pushing for just full legalization for animals and humans, because we need this to be mainstream. We need the right people with the right knowledge to be able to speak freely and to prescribe it where needed for animals and humans alike. So how about the Cornell study? How about you touch on that one?
Yeah, so the Cornell study looked at using CBD products for dogs with arthritis. And what they found was that it worked really well for these geriatric senior dogs that have arthritis. Most of the animals, as they get older, just like with people, they get joint disease, they get arthritis, and arthritis can be a very painful and debilitating condition. And so with dogs, we see it as they have difficulty walking, they have difficulty getting up, they're unable to go for longer walks like they used to. And the nice thing about this Cornell study is that they looked at it in a number of dogs, and they also did pharmacokinetic studies, which means that they looked at how it was eliminated through their body. They also did blood work to make sure that it was not affecting any of the organs. And what they found is that it was remarkably safe, and it was also effective. So, this just goes to reflect a lot of what we've been seeing in the real world for years and years. It's interesting because in any other approach to medicine, typically what you get is lots of clinical trials, and then you get the application of the medicine to the real world. But because of the laws and the regulations and the transition into the legalization phase of cannabis, we're seeing it a little bit backwards. We're seeing essentially decades of real world application and use. And then now we're just starting to really see the clinical trials and the evidence really start to show and really back up what we've been seeing in the real world.
And schools were, I know that typically schools will do a lot of, colleges will do, or universities will do a lot of studies, but they haven't been able to because of the fear of losing federal money. In some cases, at least on the THC side. So what do you think, why are they starting to do more now?
Well, I think the rules are starting to get a little bit more relaxed. The other thing is that sometimes they're able to get funding from private companies. But yeah, it has been a major hurdle because, a lot of these schools, they want to be able to do the studies. There is definitely a lot of clinical interest and academic interest in these areas. But there are a lot of hurdles for them to go over and a lot of hoops to jump through to be able to conduct these studies. But we are starting to see more and more studies come online and more schools starting to be able to do these clinical studies. And some of it is done through private funding.
And that's wonderful, for the private companies to step up to the plate and get things moving. And I mean, honestly, how often do you have something that's really never been tested, or it's just been tested on a small scale compared to penicillin and and all these other things that have been tested to death and back? It's just to be able to jump in and on the new horizon and find things out that have never been found out before. It's just an incredible opportunity. It just really is. And so what other colleges are, I know you had mentioned that CSU was working on one. So do you know of any other colleges off the top of your head that are working on studies right now?
Yeah, Colorado State University comes to mind. They finished a study looking at CBD utilizing different carriers. That study looks to be published or released actually next year. Those are the two major schools that I know about that have done studies. Others are starting to come online. We're hearing some rumblings about things, people being interested. But off the top of my head, I can't think of any other major schools that are doing it right now or have announced it. But I certainly expect more to follow.
That's awesome. Now, your product, VETCBD, you've got your product is only sold in California right now?
Right. So because our product actually does have small amounts of THC, and it is cannabis, it is through the legal California cannabis market. And so we are sold only in California dispensaries right now.
And I think you had mentioned that you were starting a CBD only line or product as well?
Yeah, so what it is it's a hemp-based product. And so the thing that we do is, it's not just going to be CBD. It's going to actually contain a lot of other minor cannabinoids.
Nice.
So it will contain CBC, CBG, and what it'll do is it'll have the THC mitigated out. So there won't be any THC in it, but it will have a number of other cannabinoids in addition to the CBD. Because the reality is that, pet ownership is a worldwide phenomenon, and there's no reason why pets in certain states can benefit and pets in other states can't benefit. We want pets everywhere to be able to benefit from this. A lot of these effects have been life-changing. When we talk about some of the dogs that have seizures and epilepsy, a lot of the owners that we talk to prior to finding cannabis and prior to using it for their dog's seizure control, they were faced with the possibility of euthanasia because they couldn't get their dog's seizures under control. And when you think about that's so sad and that's so unfortunate that something like this isn't accessible to more people. And what we've always tried to push for is accessibility to these products, to cannabis and CBD, because it's all about improving the quality of life of these animals. Yeah,
it's amazing. When you were talking about the Cornell study with the arthritis, let's talk about side effects of CBD versus side effects of some of the other pharmaceuticals that would be used for arthritis.
Sure. So some of the medications that we use for, traditionally for things like pain, especially chronic pain, which is arthritis, pain that lasts for, weeks and months and is ongoing. The medications that we use, they can have some serious potential side effects. For example, kidney damage, liver damage, GI ulceration, and those can be really, really debilitating, especially if patients are unable to recover from some of those side effects. And when we compare that to things like cannabis and CBD, it's the safety profile when formulated and dosed properly is excellent. Now, there are small percentages of patients out there that can have certain side effects like GI upset, so nausea or loose stools. Some of them may feel a little bit sedated, but that is a very, very small percentage of the population. For the overall population that uses cannabis and CBD, the safety profile of it is excellent. It's remarkable. And so when you compare the reward to risk ratio, when we're looking at cannabis and CBD, it's an excellent reward to risk ratio, whereas some of the traditionally prescribed medications, they can have a higher risk to reward ratio. But that's not to say that we shouldn't be using traditional medications. They absolutely have their place. What we should be doing is we should be looking at CBD and cannabis as an additional modality, an additional treatment method that we're able to utilize. Because I never like to say it's only one or the other.
Exactly.
Instead, they should both be utilized. They both have their time and place, because a lot of these traditional medications, depending on the condition, is absolutely going to be superior to anything that we're able to offer in terms of cannabis or CBD. And so, I never want to demonize any sort of traditional pharmaceuticals, because a lot of them, in certain cases, will be the superior option compared to cannabis and CBD. But we should absolutely think of cannabis and CBD as an alternative option to some of these more traditionally prescribed medications, because CBD and cannabis, on the other hand, can be superior to traditional medications in certain situations. So we really need to think of them as additional modalities that we're able to pick and choose from and utilize at our dispense.
Exactly. You need to have that option. It doesn't mean that everything is, going to be CBD and THC, but if you don't have the option, then you're, like you had said before, you're just doing it a service to the patient. It's, you don't need your hands tied like that. And who knows what the next thing that's going to come around is as well. Things keep changing, things keep moving forward, and we discover new things every day. So right now, this is an amazing thing. Next thing you know, might be seaweed. I don't know. but why limit your tools that you're able to use?
Right, exactly. It's all about being able to find the best tool for the situation. And in a lot of situations, you're going to have traditional pharmaceuticals be superior. In some cases, you're going to have cannabis be an excellent option. So it's all about finding the best tool for the situation.
Exactly. How about we go through some different ailments or symptoms that you have found respond well to CBD?
Sure. So, starting off with pain, pain is the big one. And when we're talking about chronic pain, we don't have a lot of good treatment options for chronic pain. And that's not just in animals, but in people also. And what we have found over the years is that cannabis can provide an excellent pain control option for chronic pain. The biggest example is arthritis. Arthritis can be very, very painful and be very debilitating. It affects the joints of dogs and also cats and other animals too. A lot of people think that certain disease processes are limited to certain species, but they don't realize that actually animals can get just about all the disease processes that you can think of in people. And so arthritis and joint disease is one of them. And we've seen remarkable turnaround in a lot of these dogs and cats that have started using cannabis and CBD, and it's really turned their lives around. The owners notice the night and day difference. And it's not just a placebo effect either, because the owners notice that these dogs are able to jump on the couch again, or jump on the bed, or go for longer walks. And so a lot of these owners are just really seeing this difference for themselves, and it's night and day for them. And so pain control, especially chronic pain control, is a huge benefit of cannabis. The other thing that we've been also looking at over the years is neuropathic pain. And what neuropathic pain is pain that specifically relates to nerves. And a lot of times we see this in spinal cord injuries. So in dachshunds and pugs and bulldog breeds, a lot of times what they can get is called intervertebral disc disease. And what happens is some of the disc material between the vertebrae actually gets squeezed and pushed up against the spinal cord. And so this is really painful, and it can cause a lot of debilitation. It can affect their ability to walk, to use their bladder, or to have bowel movements. And we've seen a lot of these patients actually improve when they're using cannabis. It can help with the neuropathic pain, but it's also great for the inflammatory aspects of it, because it has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. And anytime you have injuries like that, you want to control the inflammation. Some inflammation is good, it's beneficial, but excessive long-going inflammation can actually be very damaging, and really contribute to worsening of the disease process. The other big thing that we use it for is anxiety. Stress and anxiety, that's a part of humans, our lives. We all know that very well. but it can also affect animals too. And so the two major categories of anxiety that we typically deal with are separation anxiety. So, what that means is when owners leave, the dog or cat doesn't feel comfortable being by themselves. And so a lot of times what happens is that results in excessive vocalization or destruction to their environment, tearing up the house, or tearing themselves up, excessive grooming behaviors. And what CBD does is it specifically targets certain receptors to reduce anxiety levels. And we've seen this in a lot of patients that have separation anxiety, and the owners see a night and day difference because their dogs aren't freaking out like the way that they used to. And another form of anxiety that has made just a night and day difference in a lot of these dogs is noise anxiety. So anytime, they have fireworks going off, a lot of dogs will freak out. A lot of dogs will try to run away from the noise. In fact, July 5th is the busiest time of the year for animal shelters because during the night of July 4th, so many dogs are running away from the sounds of fireworks. And so the next day they end up getting picked up and placed into shelters, and it's actually the busiest time of the year for shelters, unfortunately. What we've seen is that so many of these patients are now using CBD to help control that noise anxiety. So whereas they were freaking out before and trying to run away, now they're much more relaxed, they're much more calm, and the owners see that difference immediately. Again, it's not a placebo effect if you can see that your dog is calm and relaxed versus panicking and freaking out.
Exactly. He's either barking or he's not.
Right, yeah.
No placebo there.
Yeah. Inflammation is another big one. So, inflammation, like I said before, it's a normal process. When you get an injury or when you get an infection, there needs to be inflammation to be able to fight off that infection or to be able to, repair tissue. But excessive chronic long-going inflammation is actually damaging and it's not good for you. And, we see that in cases with like arthritis where there's excessive joint inflammation. We see that in things like skin allergies where there's a lot of inflammation in the skin causing itchiness. We see it in certain GI conditions like inflammatory bowel disease or irritable bowel syndrome, where there's just too much inflammation going on in the GI tract, and it causes things like nausea and diarrhea and decreased appetite. And what we're seeing with cannabis and CBD is its ability to help decrease that inflammation and help control that inflammation so it's not so excessive. So we've actually seen a lot of patients use it for skin allergies, for chronic GI conditions like IBD, and they've gotten a lot of improvement over that. Nausea is another big thing that we use it for. A lot of people are familiar with cannabis use in people for nausea, especially when it comes to cancer patients or AIDS patients. In animals, well, we're all very familiar with nausea in animals. Tell me a pet owner.
Too familiar. I have a shampooer. I shampoo my carpet regularly because of my old cats. So.
Yeah, exactly. Find me a pet owner that doesn't have experience with that. And so, cats, especially as cats age, a lot of cats actually come down with what's called chronic kidney disease. And what that means is that their kidneys aren't able to function and process like they used to. And so the body's toxins gradually start building up. And when they build up, this makes the cats feel really uncomfortable. They feel really nauseous all the time, and they don't want to eat. And what we've seen a lot of improvement in this group of cats that gets kidney disease, because the CBD and the cannabis actually helps to suppress their nausea, control that nausea, and the small amount of THC can actually help stimulate that appetite. So we've had a lot of clients tell us about their use in their senior cats specifically for chronic kidney disease. It's been able to help control the nausea, and it's been able to help bring back their appetite. So that's something that a lot of people may be familiar with and use for people, but that certainly applies to animals as well. And another big thing that people are probably really familiar with is seizures. A lot of people have heard about the stories about children that have epilepsy and are able to control those seizures using CBD and cannabis. Well, we get the same thing in animals. A lot of dogs are actually affected by epilepsy, and they get seizures. They get full-blown body seizures. And, we have anti-seizure medications out there for animals as well. And a lot of them work really well. But in some cases, they may not work. And so we've actually had a lot of clients that report to us that, their dogs were using seizure medications, and either it wasn't controlling their seizures well enough, or they were getting side effects from those seizures. Side effects from those medications that are being used to help control those seizures. And so once we started on cannabis and CBD, we've had a lot of people report to us that it was not only able to help control the number of seizures that their pet was having, but also the intensity of seizures. So, there's one golden retriever that comes to mind where this dog was having multiple full-blown seizures every week. And it was not under control, and the owners were really, really concerned because the quality of life just wasn't there when this dog was having multiple seizures a week, and it was really debilitating for the dog. Fast forward to a couple months later, when they started cannabis regimen, and the dog has maybe one seizure a month now.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a night and day difference. And when the owners notice that when the dog does have seizures, it's no longer a full-blown body convulsion. It's actually very, very mild, and the dog is conscious, the dog is aware of what's going on, and it's not like he's sprawled out on the floor having a seizure. He's actually able to sit and maintain his composition while the seizure's going on. So, those are fascinating stories, and that's just one of many of the seizure patients that we've talked to and had feedback from. A lot of these clients were actually faced with the possibility of euthanasia because they weren't able to control the seizures of their dogs. And so you go from, facing potential euthanasia to being able to control the seizures to the point where they're living happy, healthy, fulfilling lives. I mean, that's amazing. And it comes down to cannabis being able to do that. So, those are some really, really great reasons that we use cannabis and CBD for. In terms of one other major category is cancer. There's a lot of talk about using cannabis for cancer. And we've seen a lot of really promising things. But, what I do want to tell people is that we have never seen it be curative for cancer. There's a lot of talk out there that says, cannabis cures this or cures that or cures cancer.
Yeah, it's not a magic bullet, people. It's not.
Right. We always want to make sure that people realize that cannabis is not something that's curative. It's therapeutic. And when it comes to cancer specifically, we have seen some cases where tumor size actually shrank, or patients were actually living far longer than their expected prognosis. So we've talked to a number of people where their pet was diagnosed with cancer, and their veterinarian said, they're looking at weeks to live. And these patients, once they started on cannabis, they've been living for months out. And they've been really able to extend their quality of life. And, we have had some where the cancer is either slowed down or it's paused. But we've never seen any cases where it's been completely curative. And so I want to make people aware of that, is that while things have been promising and while we have been able to extend the life of many of these patients, we've never seen a case where it completely eliminated all the cancer cells and the patient was cancer-free. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet. I think a lot more research needs to be done as in terms of cannabis and cannabinoids, and as it specifically applies to cannabis, or as it specifically applies to cancer. Because there's a lot of preclinical studies out there in using rodent models or tissue cultures that show that cannabinoids can potentially kill cancer cells, prevent them from spreading, or prevent them from gaining access to new blood supplies. But what we really need is more research, more data, and be able to apply that to a clinical setting. One of the most difficult things about cancer specifically is that we have so many different permutations. And what I mean by that is, when you're talking about cancer, there's so many different types of cancer. You can have cancer of the organs, and there's different types of cancer for that. Cancer of the skin, there's different types of cancer for that because there's so many different types of skin cells. Basically, for all the different types of cells in your body, any of those groups of cells can become cancerous and become their own type of cancer. So you're dealing with a massive, massive amount of different types of cancer. And then when you're talking about cannabinoids, well, you're dealing with not just THC and CBD, but you're talking about over 100 different phytocannabinoids that come from the cannabis plant. And then, when you're talking about applying the cannabinoids to cancer treatment, we also have to talk about what dose.
Yeah.
Are we talking about 1 milligram per kilogram? Are we talking about 10 milligram per kilogram? And then we also have to talk about the ratios too. Are we talking about a ratio of 10 to 1 CBD to THC, or 1 to 1, or 20 to 1? And does that apply to melanoma, or does it apply to hemangiosarcoma? So when you multiply all those factors together, you essentially get thousands of different permutations, and so it becomes something that gets really, really complicated, and something that really needs a lot of research addressed specifically for that area.
And that's why it's great that the rules are loosening up a bit when it comes to the studies and things like that, because if it can help, then we need to know how it helps, why it helps, what combination of cannabinoids helps the best, if we're using it in conjunction with a pharmaceutical, and like you said, with the dosing, biphasic properties, there's a lot to study. We could spend, oh my gosh, the rest of, well, I'm in my 50s, so the rest of my life studying it easily and still not even scratch the surface. But we got to start. So, and we have, but we need to be opening the floodgates when it comes to the federal funds to be able to do this, because there is so much potential. But
absolutely, because when we're talking about the endocannabinoid system, the system of cannabinoids that our own bodies produce, the cannabinoid receptors that are located all throughout our bodies, this system was only discovered in the early 90s. And so, this system is a very, very complex system that's deeply integrated into our bodies. We find it in our brain, in our nervous system, our cardiovascular system. It's all throughout our immune system. It's located in our immune cells and our skin cells. So it's deeply integrated in our body. It's responsible for regulating so many different functions of our body, including mood, memory, pain, metabolism, appetite. It even has roles in the reproductive system. And so when we're talking about such a complex system as the endocannabinoid system, and we only discovered it a couple of decades ago, we are really just scratching the surface. We are just at the tip of a feather. A lot of times I tell people, imagine if the endocrine system, which is a system of hormones that gets produced in your body, imagine if that system was only recently discovered in the past couple decades. Knowing that hormones affect so many different functions of our bodies and our lives, and think about, if it was just recently discovered, we would have so much to learn. And we're still learning about the endocrine system. We're still learning about how hormones affect our bodies. And so when it comes to the endocannabinoid system, the fact that we so recently discovered it, and we haven't been able to give it the research and the attention that it really needs because of the laws, because of the lack of funding, we really are just barely scratching the surface. There's so much potential, and there's so much that remains to be discovered, not just in terms of cannabis, but in terms of the endocannabinoid system itself. How it functions, what it regulates, what it does, and what happens when it gets out of balance. What happens when we're having low levels of the cannabinoids that our own bodies produce. How do we use cannabis to be able to benefit our lives and animals' lives through the endocannabinoid system. So it's a very, very fascinating area of research. It's a very fascinating topic. And it's just an amazing time period in our lives to be in the middle of it and to take part in the discovery of so many beneficial aspects of cannabis and the application of it.
It really is. It's very exciting, and I just can't wait to be able to look back 20, 30 years from now and to be able to say, oh gosh, I remember when this was illegal. I remember when veterinarians couldn't even talk to people about it.
Right, and so if you think about it now, imagine some of the seizure drugs that we prescribe to animals and to humans. Imagine looking back and saying, remember that time that we couldn't prescribe these seizure medications to seizure patients?
Yeah.
My vision is 5 to 10 years down the line, hopefully we're able to truly integrate, medicine with cannabinoid therapeutics so that physicians, veterinarians are able to recommend and prescribe cannabis products. It'll be fascinating because, it's medicine, and there's no reason why patients can't have access to medicine that can benefit them and improve their lives.
Do you know of any veterinarian colleges that are even talking about it?
So that's the fascinating thing, is that schools are not even talking about it. The students are not learning about the endocannabinoid system. And I do envision that will change very soon because, for example, in California, when we expect veterinarians to be able to discuss cannabis with clients, then ultimately the schools are going to realize that they really need to be teaching about cannabis and about the endocannabinoid system if their graduates are expected to be able to talk to their clients about it once they're out in the field. So, it's another amazing thing. Can you imagine going through medical school or veterinary school and not learning about a system? Not learning about the immune system or the cardiovascular system, or the endocrine system. Right now, that's the reality of it, is that, these students, the next generation of doctors and veterinarians are not learning about the endocannabinoid system, but, they're going to be expected to be able to talk about it and know how it applies to certain disease processes in their patients once they start practicing. And
it does exist, whether you want to believe it or not. It's been proven to exist. There is an endocannabinoid system, so...
Right, and it's not just in people. We've found it in all. It appears all animals have endocannabinoid systems too. So we found it in mammals, birds, fish, reptiles. The scientists out there are looking at anything and everything and looking to see, how their bodies process cannabinoids, the cannabinoids that their own bodies make, and how it interacts with them, to really try to figure out, what this all means and how it applies to, not just our patients, not just animals, but also to humans. So something that's really, really interesting is, even the fruit fly. Even though they haven't found a specific endocannabinoid system in insects, they have found anandamide in fruit flies.
Really?
Yeah, so it's fascinating. And anandamide is an endocannabinoid that our own bodies produce, that humans produce, and that animals produce. And they have actually found anandamide in fruit flies.
And what's the phytocannabinoid that matches with anandamide? Is that CBD or is that THC?
Similar to THC, actually.
Okay, got it. That's amazing. In fruit flies.
Right,
oh my gosh. I hate to think that I have something in common with a fruit fly, but okay, I do.
yeah. So that's what I tell people is that, one of the things that we have in common with even the fruit fly is that our bodies produce anandamide.
Amazing. Well, let's see, we're coming up on an hour here. So I told you, things go fast. Time flies when you start talking CBD and cannabinoids. So
absolutely.
What would your message be to the people that are listening? What do you want them to know about cannabis and pets?
Yeah, the thing that a lot of people realize is that, cannabis has medicinal potential. But most of the time they realize that that's in people because that's what they've been hearing about. But what we want people to realize is that it absolutely has medicinal benefits in animals too. And it doesn't have to be intoxicating. There doesn't have to be an aspect of getting high from it. When we're properly formulating and dosing cannabis, and we're using cannabinoids like CBD, the animals aren't getting high from it. They're not getting intoxicated from it. It's purely for medicinal benefits, and so many animals have been able to benefit from it, and so many animals stand to benefit from it. But unfortunately, a lot of owners can't get access to this medication. And so what we really want people to do is, fight for the laws that will allow for them to have access to these medications, because ultimately what we're trying to do is improve quality of life. And the other thing that we want people to do is to be able to talk to their veterinarians about it. There's no reason why they can't talk to their veterinarians about medication that can benefit and improve their patients' well-being. And so we want people to, talk to their state representatives, talk to their government, and say, hey, we want veterinarians to be able to talk to us about cannabis, because we're trying to find information, we're trying to do the best for our animals, and we don't want to have to go to secondary sources like the internet or non-medical professionals to find that information. We want to be able to talk to our veterinarians about it, and in the end, we want our veterinarians to be able to prescribe those cannabis products to us, because we want our veterinarian to be involved in the picture, and we want them to take an active role in the treatment of our animals using cannabis. Because if veterinarians are only allowed to discuss, but they're not able to recommend or prescribe any sort of cannabis products, then that leaves it up to a lot of non-medical professionals to be doing the recommendation on the dosing. And the onus of that should really be shifted to the veterinarian, the ones that have the medical background and the medical training to be able to make these decisions for pets and their owners.
And it's really not fair to, either for a dispensary worker to have to try to field. I mean, they're trying to help people, but that's not their job. They shouldn't have to feel like they have to be the one giving information and feeling responsible. Dosing is critical. And just even think about, this worked for my dog. Well, my dog was a Great Dane and your dog's a Chihuahua. I mean, there are differences there. Or, with cats and other animals. And like you said, it's just really important that information comes from a veterinarian or professional in the animal field. That's what you're there for. So right now, if there was another veterinarian listening to this in a different state, are there CE credits in California yet for veterinarians, or do you know of any way that they could get good information about cannabis and pets?
Yeah, so actually I've noticed that over the past couple of years, there's been more and more lectures at large veterinary conferences. For example, Western Veterinary Conference, which happens every year in Vegas, they have more and more lectures that are discussing cannabis and the endocannabinoid system, and they can get CE credits from that. I know of another group out in Colorado, a group of veterinarians that are starting to continue education courses for veterinarians, and it talks about cannabis, the application of cannabis in the endocannabinoid system. So more and more CE courses, more and more lectures are coming on board to cater specifically to veterinarians to help educate them about this new avenue, and it really focuses on being able to talk about cannabis, what the veterinarian needs to know, and how it applies to their patients. So yes, there are more and more coming on board. So that's the great news.
That is great. That's amazing. When is your CBD line coming out?
We're looking for a launch at the end of this year, and so that'll be called Dr. Shu's Pet Care, and we're looking to be able to provide that to pet owners throughout the country.
Good. Now, will you have? Because right now you can go to vetcbd.com to look at your products. Will there be a separate site for that, and if there is, will there be a link from one to the other to be able to get to it? So how will people, like in January, be able to find that?
Yeah, so drshuspetcare.com. That is the website for our hemp line.
Now, is it going to be DRSHU or DOCTORSHU?
Good point. It's DRSHUS petcare.com.
Got it. Okay. Good. Good. Yeah, it's kind of, yeah. People need to know how to get there.
Yeah, and VETCBD is our cannabis line that contains THC, and so that is sold through California licensed dispensaries. You can go to vetcbd.com. We have a little locations tab where you can just punch in your address and it'll show you the nearest dispensary. We're found in dispensaries all throughout the state of California. And the nice thing about, what we do is if people have questions, and we realize people have a lot of questions, they can always reach out to us via phone or email, and we have veterinary nurses on staff that are able to talk to them and answer their questions. The staff that we have on board, we have a combined total experience of over 60 years in the veterinary medicine field. And so when you talk to us, you're talking to veterinary professionals.
Are there any thoughts about going into other legal states?
Yes, so that is something that we're looking at doing. As more and more states legalize, we want to be able to spread into those states as well. So, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, because the reality is that, it's not just CBD. There is a lot of use for THC, but it needs to be formulated and dosed properly. And so if you're having THC in your products, it needs to be done through the individual states' network of cannabis manufacturing and distribution. So we are looking to go into other states as well to be able to provide pet owners optimal therapeutic healthcare when it comes to cannabis and their pets.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really educational.
Hey, I enjoyed doing it. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
And we'll get you back in January once Dr. Shu's line comes out. So we can share some more information about that because, unfortunately right now, only certain people can access the THC, but once you've got your CBD product out, then we can talk about, people can work with that. So, okay, everybody, we will catch up with you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us today, and remember to stay happy and stay healthy. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.